Ending poverty tops the United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, but the global effort to end extreme poverty is facing its worst setback in decades due to coronavirus, conflicts, and climate change, according to a new World Bank report. Which group of people are worst affected by COVID-19? What policies might help? And how confident is China in reaching its own poverty eradication goal set by the end of the year? Joining us in Beijing is Professor LIU BAOCHENG from the University of International Business and Economics, and from Washington, D.C., later on by Professor JOSEF MAHONEY from East China Normal University, and on the phone by Victor Gao Zhikai, Chair Professor at Soochow University. Professor Liu, let me go to you first. Let's look at this COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on poverty alleviation. According to a new World Bank report, in 2020 alone, this pandemic could drastically increase the number of people living in extreme poverty by 88 million to 115 million. How grim is the situation? I mean, are you concerned?
Absolutely. The world has grown to such a stage that the United Nations has proposed the Millennium Goals and now the Sustainable Development Goals, and the task is humongous. And right now, with the pandemic that is still looming large, so that is really a bigger hit towards the poverty situation, where sub-Saharan area, South Asian area suffers the most. And in addition, there is local swarms, and there are the military conflicts that further add salt to the wound. So how to address such sort of issue? And it is good that the World Bank has pinpointed the grave situation. But it is really up to the government and many other stakeholders to rally together as how to address this grave situation.
Right, Victor, let me go to you. The World Bank report also says the poorest are enduring the highest incidence of the disease and suffering the highest death rates worldwide. And how devastating do you think COVID-19 has been to people around the world, economically and in terms of livelihood, especially to these poor communities?
Yes, thank you very much for having me. I think COVID-19 pandemic has played a major role in devastating economies of almost all the countries in the world, including the very developed countries. Many of these economies will be in the negative for the whole year of 2020. But for the developing countries in particular, I think they suffer even more. First of all, more people in those countries suffer from the pandemic. Many die in the process. Unemployment, disruption of all kinds of commerce is very, very severe, and the toll on many particular groups of people in these developing countries who live in poverty, who live in very crowded situations, they tend to suffer more from getting infections of the pandemic and also die from the pandemic. As a result, the negative impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on these particular groups of people in especially developing countries, emerging economies, are very, very severe. And I think the World Bank is really doing the right thing to bring attention to this particular plight of these people. And I think international community need to be fully mobilized to find out solutions for these very, very disadvantaged people who are suffering disproportionately from the pandemic.
Right. The World Bank also laid out solutions that it says might work. That includes, number one, closing the gaps between policy aspiration and attainment. Number two, enhancing learning, improving data sharing. Number three, investing in preparedness and prevention. Number four, expanding cooperation and coordination. Professor MAHONEY, Washington, D.C., we understand we have you with us now. How do you look at World Bank suggestions? I mean, are they feasible? Are they deliverable? What are the challenges in implementing those suggestions?
I think the biggest problem is that we have seen that even in developing countries, the worst case being the United States, but also even in countries that have relatively good governance like Germany and others in Europe, they had a lot of strategies, they had a lot of investment, they had a lot of preparedness, and still they were caught flat-footed by this. And it took them a long time to respond, to actually implement effective strategies. They found that there was a lot of politicization that they didn't anticipate, a lot of international competition, both in the EU but broader, between the US and others, that really undermined efforts, as well as they met the limits of an international multilateral system that had not been reformed substantially over the years. And while it was able to understand the problem and talk about it, it wasn't actually able to respond to it very well. So, I think that what this illustrates is that, sure, we need to do these sorts of things, and the World Bank is right to point these out, but we don't yet see a real concerted effort to shore up on a global scale these organizations, to implement a global strategy, and to push forward much needed reforms at the same time.
Right, talking about poverty reduction, let's talk about China. In September, China's President Xi Jinping said via video link at the United Nations General Assembly session that China is confident in meeting the poverty eradication target set out in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And actually, earlier, I talked to Chen Hongbo, a senior poverty alleviation official in China, and I asked him how China is coping with COVID-19 pandemic. Let's take a listen.
有些产品过去因为疫情呢，它影响了这个销售。
The sale of some products in rural poverty-stricken areas has been affected by COVID-19. Therefore, we have conducted poverty alleviation actions which have stimulated the sales of such products. In addition, we have introduced a series of policies to help. For example, the microcredit policy for poverty alleviation that assists people who have repayment burden by postponing payments for a year to ensure production is unaffected. If people need new microcredit for poverty alleviation, we have simplified the procedures to ensure they can access funds as needed. These measures have helped soften the impact of COVID-19 in poverty-stricken areas.
Professor Liu Baocheng, in what ways do you think China's experience can inform the rest of the world?
Well, I think ideologically, how we can address the polarization of the wealth gap. So China is able to build a shared notion that the national prosperity needs to be shared, and therefore we do notice that those developed regions, the well-to-do families and NGOs and companies are being mobilized to help those remote rural areas for development. And so this is something that the sense of a family, of shared notion of wealth, and this is something that we can really proliferate around the world. And secondly, the connectivity. So China is so much engaged in building infrastructures, new infrastructures. So only when people build their own cognitive power and they know what is going on in the rest of the world, so they are able to strive and able to compete for better jobs. And third is really the e-commerce. E-commerce is not only there to provide convenience to those people in the cities, but also they are there to connect the rural areas who have the supply, but unable to logistically move to the cities or unable to promote themselves. Now we can see that particularly during the pandemic, we do see that e-commerce play a very important role to bring the development opportunities to those poverty-stricken areas. So, these three types of experiences can be shared by global community.
True. Victor, how do you look at the China solution to poverty eradication?
out very prominently. First, China has set poverty eradication as a national development goal, and the ruling party, the government, and the society at large are fully mobilized and committed to fighting off poverty as a phenomenon. So this is really very, very extraordinary and unique if you compare China with many other countries. Secondly, I think as Professor Liu correctly pointed out, China has several special strengths in this fight against poverty, like connectivity, infrastructure, and the booming manufacturing sector, for example, and also the commitment to bring technologies and advances of science to the traditional agriculture. So you're talking about a whole area of development which permeates into lots of development themes, which can help create jobs, which can help committing government resources to fight off poverty, and also providing education and training to people in poverty, because after all, they do not need a handout as much as what they need a training to be employed in a more meaningful way. I think, and also on top of that, I think China's political stability is a great, great help to China's national effort to fight off poverty. So I think China is unique in many ways, but also China's experiences can be observed and learned by many other countries in the world. Fighting off poverty on a national scale will be one of the most important breakthroughs and achievements that China has made over the past 4 decades or so.
I want to thank all our guests for today's discussion, Professor Mahoney, Professor Liu, and Victor Gao. Thank you so much. And that will do it for this edition of The Point. As always, follow us on Facebook and Twitter using the handle Liuxing in Beijing. Download the CGTN app to watch our show, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thank you for watching.